The blistering sun over the Riverside roundabout in Atlanta showed no mercy that day. Traffic dragged like a tired animal, horns blared, and street vendors hollered. Amidst the chaos, one figure sat unmoving on the cracked pavement. Elijah Carter, 28 years old, wore tattered clothes, unkempt beard, and the kind of pain in his eyes that made even stray dogs glance twice. His ribs poked through his faded shirt. His lips were dry. His stomach groaned. But he stayed silent. "Just one more day, Elijah," he whispered to himself. "Just one more miracle." But deep inside, he didn't believe it. He had stopped believing in miracles a long time ago, after life had chewed him up and spat him out. 2 city buses honked past. A child eating a hot dog dropped a piece nearby. But Elijah's pride, the only thing he had left, refused to let him crawl for it. "They all see me as dirt," he thought. "But once, I was someone." No one knew that the beggar sitting on the street had once been a child of wealth. No one cared. Not until that moment. The moment everything began to change. Across the street, inside a sleek black SUV, sat Nia Thompson, a 24-year-old woman with calm brown eyes and a heart so soft, even alley cats followed her home. She had just finished volunteering at a school in Westview and was on her way to her stepmother's high-end boutique in Brookhaven. Her eyes caught Elijah, and something tugged at her heart. "He's starving," she murmured, opening her purse. She reached for her food container and moved her hand toward the door handle. But her hand froze. "Don't you dare," came the cold voice beside her. It was Veronica Blake, her stepmother, elegant, calculating, and always in designer heels, that clacked like a judge's gavel 10 seconds before she entered a room. "These people are dangerous," Veronica snapped. "They pretend to be hungry. You help the wrong one and you'll end up stabbed. I've seen it before." Nia's voice trembled. "But he hasn't eaten. I can't just look away." Veronica's lips curled. "You want to feed beggars? Fine. I'll give you one to feed for the rest of your life." Nia looked confused but said nothing. The driver turned the car into Brookhaven's gated estates. Elijah remained behind, still forgotten, still starving. That evening, as twilight kissed the skyline, Elijah broke a piece of stale bread a church sister had handed him and shared it with 2 other homeless men under the pedestrian bridge. "Here," he said, breaking it in half. No, one should starve alone. A street preacher watching quietly turned to a woman beside him and whispered, "That one is different. There's grace in his eyes. You can't fake that." But none of them knew, not the preacher, not Elijah, not even Nia, that fate had already begun spinning its wicked wheel. From the back seat of her private car, binoculars raised to her eyes, Veronica Blake watched Elijah with a sly smile. She had found her beggar, and she was about to turn his life and Nia's into a living curse. Silence pressed down on the Thompson mansion like a storm cloud, heavy and waiting to burst. Nia stood in the living room, her fingers clutching a worn journal, cheek still stinging from the slap Veronica Blake had given her just minutes ago. Tears welled in her eyes. "What did I do wrong?" she whispered to herself. "All I did was try to help someone starving." Upstairs, Veronica stood in front of her vanity mirror, applying deep red lipstick with slow, surgical precision. Her reflection stared back, emotionless. "You think compassion is strength?" she muttered. "But I'll teach you something else. Kindness is a curse." Suddenly, the mansion's massive doors burst open. Everyone to the dining room. Now, the voice belonged to Richard Thompson, Nia's father. Once a powerful businessman, now a faded version of the man he used to be. Worn down by Veronica's manipulation, silent under her glare. "Is this really necessary, Veronica?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "More than necessary," she replied coolly. "It's family business." They all sat. Then she dropped the bomb. "Nia," she said sweetly, "you've always wanted to help the poor. Isn't that right?" Nia blinked. "Yes, I just believe people deserve dignity." "Good." Veronica clapped once. "Then you'll be pleased to know I've arranged your wedding." A heavy silence. To who? Nia asked, her voice a thin whisper. To the beggar from Riverside, she replied. What's his name again? Elijah Carter. The room spun. Nia rose so fast her chair screeched. This is madness, she cried. You can't be serious. A beggar? A total stranger? Oh, but I am, Veronica said, sipping her wine. Unless, of course, you'd prefer your little brother's hospital treatments to stop. Nia froze. Her knees weakened. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? Veronica leaned in, her voice dripping like venom. Do you know how expensive kidney treatments are? I can cancel the payments tomorrow. Let's see how long little Caleb survives without dialysis. Nia's hands balled into fists. You're a monster. No, darling, I'm a stepmother. And it's time someone in this house learned obedience. Richard slammed his fist on the table. I won't allow it. Veronica turned to him slowly. Then be ready to lose your company. You think I don't know you used company funds to fly Caleb to Houston for surgery? One phone call and you'll be in prison. The table went still. Tears ran down Nia's face. She looked from her father to her stepmother, betrayal on one side, cruelty on the other. So that's it, she whispered. You want to destroy my life because I offered food to a man? No. Veronica stood, smiling like a serpent. Because you defied me. And now you'll live with the streets. You'll marry them. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Elijah sat on the sidewalk beside a drainage ditch, sharing a bottle of water with two homeless men. I'm telling you, one of them said. That woman who gave you the bread? She was different. She had heaven in her eyes, said the other. Elijah smiled faintly. She was kind. And kind people like that. They don't cross paths with people like me more than once. Just then, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of them. 3. Bodyguards stepped out. Then, the passenger door opened. Out stepped Veronica Blake, dressed in an all-white pantsuit, sunglasses glinting under the streetlights. Everyone froze. Elijah Carter, she said, her voice cool as glass. Get in. Your life is about to change. The scent of lemongrass and imported soap filled the grand marble bathroom in the eastern wing of the Thompson estate. A bathroom so large, 3 of Elijah's former street brothers could have lived in it. Elijah stood under a stream of hot water. He barely moved. It wasn't just the steam fogging up the mirror. It was the thoughts, the ache of memories, or rather, the eerie hollowness where memories should have lived. His fingers brushed over the chrome faucet. The water felt too clean, too foreign. It slid down his skin like a stranger trying to belong. What is this place? He whispered. He turned slowly, catching his reflection in the misted mirror. A blurry silhouette. He wiped it with a towel, then froze. The man staring back was him, but cleaner, stronger, more whole than he remembered being in years. He gasped. Not just from the shock of seeing himself this way, but from something deeper. Recognition. A strange, eerie familiarity. He leaned closer. And then he saw it. A small pale mark behind his left ear. An oval-shaped birthmark. He had always had it. But now, under the soft chandelier glow, it looked familiar. Too familiar. A flash hit him like lightning. A woman smiling down at him, singing, in soft tones, Elijah Hudson, my baby mama is here. He staggered back, heart thundering in his chest. That voice, that name, Hudson? His grip tightened on the sink. Who is Hudson? Who was that woman? A knock interrupted the spiraling chaos in his mind. Sir, came the gentle voice of the butler. Ms. Veronica asked me to remind you to wear the black caftan. Your shoes and accessories are laid out. Elijah didn't answer. He stood there, shirtless, staring at his reflection with a look of terror and awe. Is this my second life? He whispered. Or the beginning of the truth? He turned to the outfit laid out, a black custom caftan. The fabric looked so rich it made his street rags feel like insults to cloth itself. He touched it gently. It was soft, smooth. He hadn't worn anything this fine since when? He asked aloud, panic rising. Why can't I remember? He inhaled sharply, dressed in silence, and avoided the mirror. Upstairs in the West Wing, Nia sat at the edge of her bed, still in her night blouse and wrapper. Her wedding gown, untouched and sealed in a silk garment bag, lay draped across a velvet armchair near the window. But she hadn't even unzipped it. Her eyes were dry. Too dry. The kind of dryness that comes only after you've cried until your soul is hollow. She sat stiffly, her mind spinning. What kind of life is this? What kind of woman marries a man she met on the street? Her fingers clutched a small picture frame, a photo of her and her younger brother Caleb, taken before his kidneys failed, before the endless hospital visits, before the threats. He was smiling, in the picture, holding a balloon. She stood behind him, arms wrapped around his small shoulders. She whispered his name like a prayer. Caleb, I'm doing this for you. Then, as if powered by something unseen, she stood. She walked slowly to the dress bag, unzipped it, and pulled out the gown. It was beautiful, fitted, white, embroidered with delicate pearls and lace sleeves. Imported, from Italy, of course. Veronica would never accept anything local for a Thompson bride. Nia held the gown to her chest. Maybe, she whispered, if I close my eyes hard enough, I'll wake up, and this will all be a dream. But she didn't wake up, and tomorrow was the wedding. Downstairs, the Thompson mansion was being transformed into a royal event. Red velvet chairs were arranged in a perfect semicircle. Silver trays of gourmet appetizers floated silently between guests on the hands of gliding waiters. Large framed photographs of Nia and Elijah, taken just hours earlier in a staged engagement, were being hung across the walls. Veronica Blake entered the room like a queen returning from conquest. Her heels struck the marble tiles with sharp precision, echoing her control with every step. She moved through the space, inspecting every detail with a sharp eye. Then she paused. One of the photos caught her attention. Elijah's face. Something about the curve of his jaw, the arch of his brows, even the way he tilted his head slightly. It was familiar. Too familiar. Her throat tightened. It can't be, she whispered. She turned abruptly, walked to the bar, and poured herself a glass of wine. Her hand trembled, slightly. The glass clinked loudly against the marble. She drank in one gulp. No. Impossible, she muttered. He's gone. That child is gone. It can't be him, but her eyes drifted back to the photograph, and a single terrifying thought slid into her mind like a dagger. If this beggar is who I fear he is, then I've brought my own destruction into this house. That night was unusually quiet, not the regular kind of Atlanta noise, the distant traffic, barking dogs, or party music wafting from somewhere down the block. No, this night was still, too still. In the guest room, Elijah sat on the edge of the bed. The food tray sat untouched on the table. The jollof rice had gone cold. The chicken still steamed faintly, but his eyes were locked on the window, watching the moonlight cast long silver shadows across the tiled floor. A soft breeze pushed the curtains gently inward like a presence entering the room. He wasn't cold, but he shivered. Elijah Hudson, he whispered again. The name had come to him 3 times that day. Uninvited, unexplained, but deeply, painfully familiar. He reached up, touching the birthmark behind his left ear. Was I ever called that? He stood and walked slowly to the dressing mirror. The floor creaked beneath his bare feet. The mirror stared back again, and that same feeling returned. The man in the glass wasn't just him. He was someone wealthier, someone who once smiled easily, who belonged. A faint knock startled him. He turned. Nothing. But on the floor, just outside the door, lay a single white envelope. His name was written in cursive on the front, not as Elijah Carter, but as Elijah Hudson. His blood turned cold. He picked it up slowly, hands trembling. Inside there was no letter, just a single faded photograph. His breath caught in his throat. It was a picture of a young boy, maybe 6 or 7, standing beside a woman with warm eyes and a kind smile. Behind them stood a mansion he couldn't quite remember, and on the woman's blouse, pinned right below her collarbone, was the same golden rose brooch that Veronica Blake always wore. Elijah staggered back, collapsing onto the bed. He clutched the photo tight. That's her. That's my mother. He stared at the child in the photo. And that's me. A wave of nausea overtook him. His chest tightened. Memories pressed against the edges of his mind like whispers through a locked door. He clutched his head and shut his eyes. Then, darkness. Then fire. Then, screams. He was standing outside a burning house, flames licking the windows, smoke curling into the sky. A woman screamed, "Hudson, run!" He turned and saw her, his mother, trying to get through a locked gate. Another figure grabbed her from behind, a woman wearing heels, face hidden, voice sharp. "You should have left quietly, Celeste. Now you'll lose everything." "Please, my son is in there," she screamed. "Exactly where he belongs." A slap. Gunshots. Then, silence. Elijah jolted upright in bed, drenched in sweat, chest heaving. The photograph lay on the floor beside him. He picked it up again with shaking hands. The brooch. The voice. The woman who tore his mother away had worn the same brooch for years. He stared at the photo. The room around him blurred. She took everything from me," he whispered, and suddenly, everything inside him began to change. Meanwhile, in her private bedroom suite, Veronica Blake stood in front of her vanity mirror. She wasn't applying lipstick now. She was staring, frozen. In her hand, she held another copy of the same photograph Elijah had just found. Her fingers clenched the frame. Her knuckles whitened. Her eyes were wide but void of emotion. "I watched you burn," she whispered. "I read the reports. I saw the blood." She clutched the golden rose brooch pinned to her robe. "You're not supposed to be alive." Then, she moved with sudden purpose. She pulled open a drawer, reached inside, and retrieved a sleek silver phone, the one she used for matters no one else was supposed to know about. She pressed a number from memory. The line rang once, twice. Then a male voice answered. "Yes, ma'am?" "Find out everything about the beggar," she said coldly. "Real name, real past, all of it." "Yes, ma'am." She hung up, turned back to the photograph, and stared at Elijah's face. "If you're really Hudson," she whispered, "then I brought my own executioner into my home." The next morning, the sun rose over Brookhaven, casting a soft glow across the Thompson estate. But inside the mansion, there was no peace. Not in Elijah's guest room, where the photo from the night before lay wrinkled beside a rumpled bed. Not in Veronica's suite, where a full glass of untouched wine sat beside an unread document. And not in Nia's room, where she sat fully dressed, eyes wide open, heartbeat erratic. It was the morning of her wedding, but it felt like a funeral. She sat at her window in her silk night blouse, her wrapper still tied tightly around her waist. She hadn't slept, not even for a second. Her makeup team had arrived at 6, but she hadn't let them touch her. Not yet, not until she could breathe. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced the cold steel bars of the window. Outside, 2 white doves fluttered around the mango tree. She remembered the first time she saw Elijah, broken, silent, proud. "He didn't beg," she whispered. "He just sat there, like someone waiting for something he'd lost a long time ago." She touched the edge of her wrapper and closed her eyes. "Who are you, Elijah? What is this life we're being pushed into?" Her thoughts drifted to Caleb, lying weak in his hospital bed across town. The last time she saw him, he'd whispered, "Don't cry, Nia. God will surprise us." She exhaled a soft, shivering breath. Maybe this is the surprise. Elsewhere in the estate, Veronica Blake paced her study in a fitted black dress with gold trim. Her calm exterior was cracking, subtle but there. In her hand was a flip phone, the kind only people with secrets still used. She pressed a button. The call connected. "Madam," said the voice on the other end. "We did the search, and we found something disturbing." Veronica sat down slowly. "Talk." "Elijah was found unconscious in Abba over a decade ago. Head trauma. No memory. The church kept him in a home before he ran away." Veronica's breath caught in her throat. "What name was he registered under?" she asked, barely above a whisper. The answer came like a dagger. "Hudson. Elijah Hudson." Her hand slipped. The phone hit the marble floor with a loud clack. She didn't move. Then she stood, walked to the mirror, and slowly fastened the golden rose brooch to her chest. "So, it's true." She turned sharply to the window. "And if he remembers, everything I buried." At the estate's main gate, just past 9 a.m., the head security guard, Mr. Sani, noticed a figure standing outside, an elderly man. His beard was gray, his hat worn. He held a slightly trembling envelope in one hand, not from age, but from the weight of what it carried. "Good morning, sir," Mr. Sani called. "Can I help you?" The old man nodded slowly. "I need to speak to someone in this house. It's urgent." "About what?" He held up the envelope. Inside was a faded photograph, the same one Elijah had received the night before. But this copy had something extra, something scribbled on the back in faded ink. "Hudson, taken before the fire. Thompson Estate." Sani squinted. "Where did you get this?" "I was his nanny," the man said quietly. "The boy in this picture, I've searched for him for over 10 years. His voice cracked. "I believe he's here." Sani hesitated, then picked up the intercom. Inside the house, Elijah stood near the grand staircase. He was dressed in a cream-colored agbada. Its luxurious fabric shimmered in the light. But he looked deeply uncomfortable. The mansion whispered to him. The hallways, the chandeliers, even the scent of polished wood floors. "I know this place," he thought. "But how?" Then the butler approached quietly. "Sir, there's an elderly man at the gate. He says he has something for you. A photograph." Elijah's breath stopped. "What kind of photograph?" "A child and a woman. Standing at a fountain." Elijah grabbed the staircase railing to steady himself. "Bring him in." A few minutes later, the old man entered, walking slowly. Elijah watched him with wide, searching eyes. The man stopped 3 feet away and burst into tears. "My boy, Hudson, you're alive." Elijah's lips parted. "You know me? I carried you on my back. I fed you pap. I watched your mother die in front of you." Elijah staggered back. His voice cracked. "Tell me everything." The old man opened the envelope and handed Elijah the photograph. "This was taken 2 days before the fire." Elijah flipped it over, read the handwriting. His hands began to shake violently. He stared at the photo. "The brooch," he murmured. "The woman who took my mother wore that same golden brooch." "What's her name?" the old man asked gently. Elijah turned slowly, eyes burning with realization. "Veronica Blake." Meanwhile, Nia sat in her room, fully dressed in a white silk robe. The makeup artist stood awkwardly behind her, waiting. The bride wasn't glowing. She wasn't smiling. She looked like someone about to walk into battle. Her fingers clutched, a gold necklace, her late mother's. Her expression calm on the outside, but inside a quiet storm brewed. "Are you all right, madam?" the makeup artist asked finally. Nia blinked. "What?" "Should I begin your makeup?" The team downstairs was already waiting. The photographer's assistant had texted twice. She nodded slowly, but then added, "Just give me a few more minutes." The makeup artist bowed slightly and stepped out. Nia remained seated, staring at her reflection. "Who is this woman in white?" she asked softly. "What is she marrying into?" For the first time since the madness began, doubt crept into her chest, not just about Elijah, but about everything. Why had Veronica suddenly insisted on the marriage? Why had her father grown so silent? And what was it about Elijah's eyes? Those eyes that carried a weight too large for someone who had once sat alone in the dirt? "There's something you're not telling me, Elijah," she whispered, "and I'll find out, before I say I do." In the smallest parlor tucked behind heavy curtains and antique doors, Elijah and the old man, Mr. Grant, sat facing each other. Between them on the table lay the faded photograph like a sacred relic unearthed from time. Neither spoke for several long minutes. Finally, Elijah broke the silence. "So, you were my nanny?" Mr. Grant nodded, voice low. "Your mother, Celeste Carter, trusted me with everything. Your meals, your clothes, even your bedtime prayers, you were her world." Elijah's fingers trembled as they rested on the photo. "And my father?" Mr. Grant's gaze darkened. He hesitated, then spoke. "Your father, Christopher Carter, was murdered, along with your mother." Elijah's jaw clenched. "Murdered? By who?" A long pause. "I don't know for certain. But I remember one night, just before the fire. You were barely 7. I heard shouting. Your father. Accusing someone of betrayal." "Who?" Mr. Grant's voice dropped to a whisper. "A woman, a staff member. Trusted, quiet, ambitious." Elijah stared at him. "Who?" Mr. Grant's throat tightened. "Veronica Blake." Elijah sat back slowly. The name. He'd known it wasn't coincidence. The brooch. The way she stared at him in the photos. The way she brought him into this house only to humiliate him. "She was my mother's assistant," Mr. Grant continued. "She was smart, cold, and there were rumors. Rumors of an affair with one of your father's political rivals." Elijah stood, eyes filled with rage and clarity. "She helped destroy my family, then left me in the street. A beggar." His voice shook. "And now, she's here, in this house, running this family, this marriage." He turned toward the mirror. But, this time, he didn't flinch at the man staring back. "No, she won't destroy anything else," he said, voice firm, "because I won't let her." In another part of the estate, Veronica sat in a plush velvet chair, legs crossed, a glass of chilled champagne in hand. She wore a stunning wine-colored gown with a high slit, the dress she planned to wear to the reception, but her eyes were fixed on her phone. A message appeared from an anonymous number. "The man at your gate has entered the house." Her heart skipped. She stood and walked toward the large painting near the hallway. Behind it, a hidden safe. She pressed a pattern of buttons only she knew. The safe clicked open. Inside, wrapped in black velvet, was a small golden handgun. She stared at it in silence. "Elijah Hudson, if you are who I think you are, then today must be your last wedding." She slowly closed the safe and locked it. In her upstairs suite, Nia now stood fully dressed. Her gown shimmered like moonlight. Pearls embroidered the bodice. Her veil floated lightly behind her shoulders. Her hair was styled in soft curls and her skin glowed under gentle powder. She looked like a bride in every way. But her heart. Her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "The man you're marrying is not who he says he is. Meet me behind the mango tree. Now." Nia read it once. Twice. Then she lifted her gown and walked swiftly out of the room. She didn't tell anyone. Not even the makeup team chasing her down the hallway shouting, "Madam, your song is playing. You're late." She didn't stop. She needed to see him, not the groom, the truth. Behind the Thompson estate, the compound was calm, eerily so. While the front lawn buzzed with guests in bright aso-ebi attire, flamboyant hats and soft jazz drifting from speakers, the rear garden, especially beneath the old mango tree near the servants' quarters, was silent, too silent for a wedding day. There, in the shade, stood Nia, her heels sinking into the soft earth as she stared wide-eyed at the frail old man before. Her Mr. Grant, the nanny who claimed to know her groom, was mid-confession, his voice fragile but every word sharp like glass. "The man you're marrying." "He's not a beggar," he said. "He's Hudson Elijah Carter, son of Christopher and Celeste Carter, the only heir to one of the most powerful families this state ever knew." Nia's lips parted, but no words came. "He was presumed dead," Mr. Grant continued, "in the same mysterious fire that claimed both his parents." She shook her head slowly, denying what her heart had already begun to accept. "No, you must be mistaken. Elijah can't be Hudson. That's not possible." He didn't argue. Instead, he held out the photograph, the same one Elijah had received the night before. She took it with trembling fingers. There he was, smaller, rounder, smiling, beside a woman in blue. Nia stared closer, and there, on the woman's blouse, the same golden rose brooch Veronica Blake wore to church every Sunday. She staggered back, eyes wide. "This brooch? Veronica has it." Mr. Grant nodded. "Grave. Because it was stolen from your groom's mother, worn like a trophy after betrayal." Nia clutched the photo to her chest. Betrayal? How? She was Mrs. Carter's personal assistant, trusted like family. But rumors whispered she was feeding information to political enemies. Your groom's father confronted someone the night before the fire. Hours later, the estate was burning. She couldn't breathe. And now, Veronica wants to silence him. Or finish what she started. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Nia straightened. "I need to see him." Mr. Grant touched her arm. "Be careful. Veronica suspects something. I saw the fear in her eyes when she looked at him today." Nia's jaw hardened. "Let her be afraid." She looked at the photo one last time. She tried to bury a prince. Now she's marrying him to the woman who sees him for who he truly is. Inside the mansion, the wedding hall was lit with golden chandeliers. Candlelight danced across mirrored centerpieces. A long white carpet stretched toward the altar. A soft string quartet played in the background. Elijah stood at the altar, dressed in a white ceremonial agbada embroidered with silver thread. He stood tall, unmoving. But inside, he was a storm. Every second ticked like a drumbeat in his ears. His name pulsed in his chest. "Hudson, that's who I am. That's who I was before they stripped me of everything," he whispered to himself. "Today I stop surviving and start remembering." In the front row, Veronica Blake sat poised, her designer clutch in hand, fingers wrapped tightly around it. Too tightly, because inside the clutch was the golden handgun. Her plan had changed. If he speaks, if he remembers too much, she would end it. Right there, in front of everyone. Meanwhile, Nia entered through the back hall. She moved quickly through the corridor, lifting her gown to avoid tripping. Two makeup artists chased after her, confused and whispering, "Madam, the pianist already started, please." But she wasn't headed for the altar. She was heading straight for the private lounge where she knew Elijah would be waiting, alone, for his cue. She needed to see his face, to look into his eyes, before she made the biggest decision of her life. Backstage, Elijah sat alone, staring at his hands. He could hear distant murmurs, the pianist playing, chairs shifting, the low buzz of anticipation. But inside the lounge, time moved slower, quieter, heavier. The door creaked open. He turned. Nia stood there, breathless, veil slightly crooked, her white gown glowing under the soft light. Her eyes were wide, not with panic but with truth. They locked eyes. For a long moment, neither said anything. Their silence said more than words could. Finally, Nia stepped forward. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Who are you? Really?" Elijah swallowed. "I don't know everything yet, but I remember a name, a song, a fire, and a brooch." She reached into her gown and pulled something from the folds, The photograph. The brooch belonged to your mother, she said softly. Veronica, where's it now? He looked at her gently. You don't have to go through with this. But Nia shook her head. Yes, I do. But not because I'm afraid. Not because of Caleb, not because of her. She stepped closer. I'm marrying you because I believe the truth deserves a witness. There was a long pause. Then their fingers touched, gently, deliberately. Let's go, she whispered. Together, he replied. Inside the grand hall, the entire room rose to their feet as Nia emerged from the side hallway. The room fell silent. No music, no clapping, no whispers. Just the sound of her footsteps on the white carpet as she walked toward the altar. Her gown shimmered. Her face glowed, not with bridal joy, but with purpose. Each step was deliberate. Every camera in the room turned. Every guest leaned forward, but Nia saw no one. Her eyes were locked on Elijah, or rather Hudson. He stood tall, his white agbada catching the candlelight, his gaze unreadable. But when she reached him, something flickered in his eyes. Gratitude and grief. The music resumed, soft, gentle. They turned to face each other. Behind them, Veronica sat stiff in the front row, clutch tightening around the hidden weapon inside her purse. She smiled. But her hands were sweating. Her carefully crafted world was unraveling, and her past was clawing its way back from the grave. The officiating pastor stepped forward, a kind-eyed man in his 60s, voice calm and measured. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. His words floated gently through the room like incense, but the tension hung in the air like smoke. Nia heard none of the prayers. Hudson barely nodded through the declarations. They were both waiting, not for the vows, but for her. The woman in the front row, whose brooch gleamed too brightly. The woman whose fingers hadn't unclenched since Nia entered the room. Then the moment came. The pastor looked at the groom. Do you, Elijah Carter, take Nia Thompson to be your lawfully wedded? Hudson raised a hand. Before I answer, he said, voice calm but loud enough to echo through the hall. Gasps rippled. The pastor blinked. Yes, son? I have something to say, and I must say it now, before I take vows under a false name. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones lifted. Cameras clicked. At the altar, Hudson turned to face the guests, his posture calm, his voice firm. My name is not Elijah Carter. Gasps spread like wildfire. Front row guests leaned forward in disbelief. The pastor hesitated, clearly thrown off. One of the groomsmen dropped his program. From the front row, Veronica Blake slowly stood. Her face was frozen in a perfect smile, but her eyes, wild. This man is unstable, she announced smoothly. He was found on the streets. He has no records, no family. He's nobody. That's a lie. The voice came from the back. All heads turned. An elderly man in traditional attire was making his way down the aisle, slowly but steadily. Mr. Grant. His face was solemn, but his voice was strong. I was there when he was born. I carried him on my back. I held him the night his parents were murdered. The room gasped. The pastor stepped down from the altar, meeting the old man mid-aisle. Sir, who are you? My name is Jeremiah Grant, former steward and nanny of the Carter family. He opened a leather folder and pulled out a yellow document. This, he said, holding it up, is Hudson Elijah Carter's birth certificate. More gasps. Some guests started to cry. Veronica swayed slightly on her heels. That's not... He can't be... Mr. Grant turned to her, eyes hardening. You were there the night of the fire. You told Celeste you'd help close up the house. You were the last person seen with the family before the explosion. At the altar, Nia stepped back in stunned silence. Hudson's fists clenched. His voice cracked. Why? He turned to Veronica. Why did you do it? Veronica glanced around. Her mask cracked. The warmth vanished from her face. And then, finally, she snapped. I was tired of being invisible, she spat. Tired of taking orders from people born into wealth while I stayed in the shadows. I was smarter than your mother, smarter than all of them, but nobody saw me. The pastor moved back. Hudson stared at her, not with rage, but with something worse. Pity. You burned a family, he said quietly. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she whispered. Then she reached into her clutch. Screams erupted. She pulled out the golden handgun. Hudson didn't flinch, but Nia moved. First, she stepped between them, arms wide. No, she shouted. If you want to kill someone, kill me, but this ends today. The room froze, and then, like a ghost, Richard Thompson appeared behind Veronica. Nobody else dies today, he said, voice trembling. With both hands, he grabbed her wrist and slowly pried the gun away. Enough, he whispered, enough destruction. Security rushed forward. Veronica collapsed to her knees. She didn't scream, she didn't fight. She just stared, numb, empty. The guests slowly began to leave, some still crying, others recording everything. On the altar steps, Hudson sat beside Nia, hand over hers. You still want to marry me? He asked quietly. She turned to him. I was never marrying a beggar, she said softly. I was marrying a man with dignity. She smiled. And now I know. He's a prince too. The golden evening sun spilled over the Thompson estate, casting long shadows across the now silent mansion. The wedding was over. The cake stood untouched. The music had stopped halfway through the first hymn. The guests were gone, leaving behind nothing but whispers and stained napkins. Outside the gates, news vans, bloggers, and curious neighbors gathered. Word had spread like wildfire. A beggar turned out to be a billionaire's lost son. The bride's stepmother pulled a gun at the altar. A dead family had come back to life. Through a name. Hudson sat alone in the study, still dressed in his white agbada, now wrinkled and stained, with tension. He hadn't changed, hadn't moved. His eyes were fixed on the floor, his mind somewhere far behind him. He whispered, Christopher, I am your son. But how do I become you again? The study smelled of old books and quiet secrets. An oil painting of his father, Christopher Carter, hung above the mantel, stoic, proud. Hudson stood and walked toward it. He stared into the painted eyes of the man whose name he was reclaiming. They stole everything, he said under his breath. But they couldn't erase you. Across the mansion, in a smaller guest room, Nia was helping her younger brother Caleb sit upright. He had been brought home from the hospital earlier that day, frail but stronger. So he's not a beggar? Caleb asked, wide-eyed. Nia laughed softly, adjusting his pillow. He's actually richer than everyone in this entire neighborhood. Caleb's jaw dropped. Even richer than that lady with the fake eyelashes and the G-Wagon? Way richer, she grinned. They both laughed, but her smile faded slightly as she sat beside him. Things are changing, Caleb. Fast, and I don't know what comes next. Caleb tilted his head. Do you love him? Nia paused. She looked away. I don't know if it's love, not yet, but I know he's more than a man with a past. He's a man with purpose. That same night, hundreds of miles away in a sleek high-rise office in Washington, D.C., a man sat alone staring at a laptop screen. Senator Langston Hale, age 61. Powerful, dangerous, forgotten by most, but not by history. He watched the wedding footage on loop, Hudson's speech, Veronica's outburst, the confession, the scandal. He leaned back slowly. So, he survived. He turned to his assistant, a younger man with a scar over one eyebrow. I want every file we have on Hudson Carter. Every orphanage, every church, every witness. He paused, then added, voice cold. If this boy remembers too much, he smiled faintly. We'll bury him again. Back at the mansion, Hudson entered the guest room where Mr. Grant now rested. The old man was sitting up, a Bible in his lap. Hudson stood in the doorway for a moment, unsure of what to say. Then he walked forward, voice low. Thank you. For everything. Mr. Grant looked up and smiled. There's still more to remember. He reached into a worn leather bag and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, deeds, letters, account records, names, all tied to the Carter estate, declared destroyed, then swallowed by political vultures. This, Mr. Grant said, is what they took from you. Hudson's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. And this, Mr. Grant added, voice solemn, is what they fear you'll take back. In a dimly lit holding cell at the downtown precinct, Veronica Blake sat alone on a wooden bench. Her once flawless makeup had faded. Her posture was slouched. Her eyes were blank. The door creaked. A uniformed officer stepped in. Someone posted your bail. Veronica blinked. Who? The officer didn't answer. He opened the cell door and gestured. She stepped out, her heels echoing on the cold cement. Outside, under the yellow glow of a flickering street lamp, stood a man in a tailored dark suit. His face was hidden beneath the brim of a hat. His hands were deep in his coat pockets. She froze. He didn't turn. Instead, he spoke, calm, low, and sharp. You ruined the Carter family once. He finally turned toward her. His face was lean, aged, and dangerous. Let's do it again, he said. Veronica whispered, stunned. Senator Hale? He nodded. Welcome back, Veronica. The next morning, rain fell gently over the Thompson mansion. Not a storm, not a downpour, but the kind of quiet drizzle that follows funerals and secrets. Hudson stood by the library window, watching drops streak down the glass like tears from heaven. Behind him, a laptop screen blinked, open to a press release document, a declaration that he, Hudson Elijah Carter, was alive and reclaiming his family's estate. But he hadn't signed it because something had arrived that morning. An envelope, no stamp, no return address, just placed at the door like a ghost's whisper. He tore it open. Inside, a single slip of paper. Do not stand before cameras, do not speak to the press. What they did once, they will do again. You survived once. You will not survive a second time. A friend. Hudson read it again. Then again. His heart pounded. Not with fear, but with the weight of a truth he could no longer ignore. This wasn't a prank. This was a warning and a plea. Upstairs, Nia moved through Veronica's former bedroom, now cleared by police but still untouched by family. Her father refused to go near it. Let it rot, he had said. But Nia wanted answers. She opened drawers, brushed aside jewelry boxes, and finally found it, a small, cracked wooden box. Inside, a second golden rose brooch, but this one was different. Same design, same weight, but scratched on the back was something faint, hidden beneath a layer of grime. She squinted. Knee, April 11th, 13, her chest tightened. Namdi. Estate, she whispered. The date of the fire. She flipped the brooch over and stared at it. Then it clicked. This wasn't Veronica's, she murmured. This was Celeste's, the one she wore that night. She pulled out her phone, opened the wedding photo, the one of Hudson and his mother at the fountain, and zoomed in. There it was, the same brooch. She dropped to her knees, tears in her eyes. She didn't just steal money, she whispered. She stole a mother's memory and wore it like it was hers. Elsewhere in Atlanta, a black SUV sat parked in the shadows behind a hotel. Inside, two men sat still, dressed in black, faces hard. One loaded a tranquilizer dart, the other polished a silenced pistol. A phone buzzed. A message appeared. After the speech, make it clean, no witnesses. At Victory Towers Hotel, a crowd was already gathering in the rain-soaked courtyard. Press vans, flashing cameras, curious bystanders, and invited dignitaries filled the space with nervous energy. Inside a penthouse suite, Hudson stood by the balcony wearing a deep navy blue agbada with silver embroidery. His beard was neatly trimmed, his eyes tired but focused. This is it, he whispered. A knock at the door. Nia entered, dressed in a sky blue wrapper and boo-boo. Her hair was pulled back, regal and simple. She walked up to him, adjusted his collar with care. "Ready?" she asked gently. "Even if I'm not," Hudson replied. "I have to be." She held something in her hand, the golden rose brooch. "Wear this," she said. "Let them see what was stolen." He looked at it, then pinned it to his chest, right over his heart. "Let's give them the truth," he said quietly. "And if truth fails," Nia whispered, "let's give them legacy." He finished. Downstairs, the conference hall brimmed with tension. A massive banner stretched across the stage. The return of the true son, Hudson. E-Speaks phones were raised. Microphones clicked. Social media boiled with hashtags. Hudson returns. Beggar Prince. Justice for the Carters. Outside the hotel, across the street, hidden in the shadow between two buildings, the black SUV sat in silence. Inside it, two men waited. One cleaned the silencer, the other locked a dart into place. A phone buzzed. After the speech, no mistakes. Back inside, Hudson stood with Nia, Richard Thompson, and Mr. Grant, who now walked slowly with a cane. A security officer approached. 5 minutes. Nia squeezed Hudson's hand. "Say what you were born to say." He nodded, then walked toward the stage. The lights dimmed. The chatter stopped. Hudson stepped into view, walking slowly, deliberately, toward the podium. Each step was a whisper of the past. The fire, the dirt, the hunger, the mop buckets, the wedding, the betrayal. And now, this. He reached the microphone. The lights flickered, phones raised. Then he began. "My name is Hudson Elijah Carter." A collective gasp. "You once knew me as a beggar. Some of you walked past me. Others tossed scraps. Some even crossed the street when I sat alone. I don't blame you. I might have done the same." He held up the brooch. "This belonged to my mother, Celeste Carter. She died wearing it. Someone stole it and wore it like a trophy." Cameras zoomed in. "This isn't just a press conference," he said. "This is a resurrection." He stepped forward slightly. "I did not come here to beg. I came here to reclaim what was taken." He pointed to the front row. "And I'm not here alone. I stand with the woman who saw value in me before the world knew my name." He nodded to Nia. "I dedicate this moment to the man who held me when I had no voice, Mr. Grant, and to every child made to feel invisible." The crowd erupted in applause. Some wept openly. Hudson closed the folder in front of him. "They buried me once," he said, voice firm. "But I rose. And I remember now. Everything." Thunderous applause shook the room, but outside, the SUV doors opened. 2 men stepped into the rain. Silenced pistol, tranquilizer dart, unmarked caps. Inside, Nia stepped out for air, her heart full. The truth, spoken. She stepped into the corridor. Then she saw them. 2 men, no badges, no press tags, moving fast. One raised a hand, something glinted. Her instincts screamed. "Hudson!" she yelled. A gunshot cracked through the hotel like a whip through a cathedral. People screamed. Cameras dropped. Security surged forward. Hudson ducked as Nia slammed into him, pushing him to the ground behind the podium. Another shot. Glass shattered. They rolled, shielding each other. "Nia!" he gasped. "Are you hurt?" "No," she breathed. "You?" "I'm fine." But someone else wasn't. Across the stage, Mr. Grant collapsed, blood blooming across the white of his shirt. Security tackled. The shooters. One went for a knife in his boot. He was slammed down with a brutal thud. The other spat blood, face bruised. Chaos blurred. Sirens screamed. Hudson scrambled to Mr. Grant's side. No, stay with me. Please." The old man opened his eyes. "Barely. You said your name. You remembered. That's enough." Hudson shook his head, crying. "Help is coming. Please, don't talk. Save your strength." A faint smile touched Mr. Grant's lips. Your father would be proud. Then darkness overtook him, but he was still breathing, barely. Hours later, in a heavily guarded police station near downtown Atlanta, the two captured gunmen sat in separate interrogation rooms. Hudson watched from behind a one-way mirror, Nia. Beside him, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. Neither man had spoken for hours, until one finally broke. The younger of the two couldn't handle the silence. We weren't paid to kill him, he whispered. Just to scare him, make him leave Atlanta. Paid by who? The inspector asked. The young man hesitated, then exhaled. Senator Langston Hale. Hudson leaned forward, eyes narrowing. At first, the gunman continued. But then, the order changed. The inspector stiffened. Changed by who? The boy's voice dropped, glancing nervously at the mirror. He didn't know Hudson stood just beyond it, but he stared right at it, then said a name that shattered the room. Marcus Thompson. Nia gasped. My brother. Hudson turned to her, stunned. I thought he was still in Dubai. So did I. That night, across the world in a luxury lounge in Dubai, Marcus Thompson swirled a glass of champagne, watching Hudson's speech on repeat. The shooting, the chaos, the headlines. Beggar Prince survives assassination. Hudson Carter declares legacy war. He smiled faintly, raised a toast to the screen. You should have stayed a beggar, Hudson. Back at St. Luke's Hospital, Mr. Grant lay unconscious, but stable. The bullet had narrowly missed his heart. Machines beeped softly, a faint rhythm of hope. Hudson sat beside him, staring at the old man's frail hand. Nia entered quietly, sitting down without a word. They didn't speak for a while. Then she said, My brother tried to kill you. Hudson nodded slowly. I don't think he wanted me dead, just gone. My name now threatens everything he's built in the shadows. She trembled. My family. What are we? Hudson took her hand gently. Whatever they were, you are not them. She looked away, tears in her eyes. Do you still want to be with me? Knowing I'm from them? Hudson looked at her, wiped a tear from her cheek. You saved me, long before I remembered who I was. That's the only family I care about. 3 days passed. The news hadn't stopped. Beggar billionaire survives shooting. Carter legacy threatens old political families. The Thompson divide, brother or betrayer. But no one knew the full story. Not yet. In a private study now secured by Hudson's legal team, a detective handed him a small device. We recovered this from Veronica Blake's cell, the officer said. She didn't know she was being recorded. Hudson pressed play. Her voice, cracked and unraveling, filled the room. I didn't mean to kill them. I just wanted the documents gone. I thought burning the study would erase it all. But she was inside. Celeste, screaming. I ran. I ran like a coward. The boy wasn't supposed to survive. I checked his room. It was empty. I thought he was gone. But Marcus, he saw me. That little snake. I paid him to stay quiet. And he did. All these years, but now, greed never sleeps. Hudson closed his eyes. So it was true. Both of them. At the airport, Marcus Thompson stepped off a private jet. Dressed in a sleek gray suit, sunglasses hiding his calculating gaze, he smiled at the cameras waiting for him. I'm here to support my sister, he said to the press. What happened was a misunderstanding. No further comments. But his smile didn't reach his eyes. Later that evening, Hudson's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. You and I need to talk, said a smooth, cold voice. Where? Hudson asked calmly. Somewhere quiet. No press, no security, just you and me. Hudson didn't hesitate. Agreed. The next day, on a private rooftop overlooking Atlanta, two men met alone. Hudson wore a simple black shirt and jeans. No entourage. Marcus Thompson arrived 5 minutes later, impeccable as ever. Tailored suit, golden cufflinks, serpent in silk. They didn't shake hands. Marcus sat across from him, crossed one leg over the other. "I didn't think you'd come alone," he said. "I didn't think you'd come back at all," Hudson replied. They stared at each other, then Marcus leaned in. "You've made quite the name for yourself, brother." Hudson's voice was calm. "We're not brothers. Same house, same bloodline. That makes us something. You tried to have me killed." Marcus chuckled. "I tried to protect what I built. You arrived like a ghost, stirred sympathy, but you don't understand the weight of the name you now carry." "I understand legacy," Hudson said, "and I'm taking mine back." Marcus leaned back. "Then let's cut a deal." Hudson raised an eyebrow. "What kind of deal?" "Drop the charges. Let me walk. You take the estate. I keep my political leverage. You get headlines. I get boardrooms." Hudson pulled out a small recorder and tapped play. Veronica's confession. Played again. Marcus's smile faded. "The police recorded it," Hudson said. "And now it's with my lawyers. If I go down, you burn with me." Marcus's jaw clenched. "What do you want?" Hudson stood. "Leave Atlanta. Withdraw from your campaign. Renounce the estate. Publicly. You disappear. And if I don't?" Hudson leaned close. "I'll destroy you, not with bullets, with memory, with truth." Marcus stared at him for a long moment, then smiled, cold and quiet. "You're more dangerous than I thought." Hudson turned and walked away. "You're less clever than you believed." Back at the hospital, Mr. Grant opened his eyes. Hudson was at his side. "You made it," he whispered. The old man smiled faintly. "Of course I did," he said softly. "I still have one more story to tell you. It was the first truly quiet. Day and weeks, no news vans outside the gate, no assassination attempts, no whispers. Just the soft chirping of birds and the steady beeping of hospital monitors." Hudson sat beside Mr. Grant, who was propped up with pillows, spooning porridge with the slow, steady movements of a man who had lived too much and survived. "Just enough." "You said you had a story," Hudson asked gently. Mr. Grant nodded and reached beneath his pillow, pulling out a weathered envelope. "I've kept this hidden for over a decade," he said. "Your mother gave it to me the day before. The fire. Told me to hide it somewhere no one would find it, said I'd know when it was time to give it to you." Hudson took the envelope carefully, hands already shaking at the sight of the handwriting. "It was addressed to my Hudson, in case I don't wake up tomorrow." His throat tightened. He opened it slowly. Inside, a handwritten letter. The ink faded in, places but the love behind every word unshakable. "My precious son, if you're reading this, heaven chose not to let me stay. Forgive me for leaving too soon. Forgive me for not stopping what was coming. But know this, you are more than your name. You are more than our estate. You are my heartbeat. I have hidden the key to your father's final documents beneath the third floorboard of the East Corridor in the house. And never trust a smile that looks too much like your father's, but lacks his warmth. Live boldly. Lead bravely. Don't let grief become your crown. I will always love you. Always. Mom." Hudson folded the letter against his chest, eyes wet. Naya entered quietly and sat beside him. She saw his expression and didn't speak. She simply reached out and held his hand. "She knew," he whispered. "She knew she wouldn't survive, but she believed I would." Across the city, national television cut to breaking news. Marcus Thompson, now in a solemn agbada, stood before a row of microphones at the state capitol. "Good evening, Georgia," he began. "I come before you not as a candidate, not as a politician, but as a brother who has caused pain." Cameras clicked. "I officially withdraw from my senatorial campaign and relinquish all claims to the Carter estate. I will be leaving the country indefinitely." Gasps rippled through the press corps. But he wasn't done. He looked directly into the main camera. "Some people are born into legacy. Others dig it out of the ground, but don't ever forget. Even ghosts cast shadows." Then he smiled. Not warm, not broken. predatory. That evening, beneath the scorched remains of the Carter estate, Hudson returned. The house had been locked away, hidden behind metal fencing and forgotten debris. He carried a crowbar, a flashlight, and the letter in his coat pocket. He stepped carefully over cracked tile and burnt timbers until he reached the east corridor, where the third floorboard creaked beneath his feet. He knelt, pried it open. Inside, wrapped in waterproof cloth, was a small lockbox. He opened it. Inside were the last documents of his father's empire. Deeds, legal papers, international holdings, and beneath them, a photograph. His parents' wedding day. His mother in a champagne gown. His father in a white suit. And in their arms, a baby Hudson. He held the photo to his chest. "You kept everything," he whispered. "You believed I'd come back." But across the woods, behind the line of trees, a dark car was parked. Inside, a shadowed figure watched through binoculars. She lifted a phone. "He has the box," the voice said. A woman on the other end replied, "Not yet. Let him think he's won. We'll strike when the world is clapping." The courtroom smelled of old wood, paper, and tension. On one side, Hudson. Carter sat in a tailored navy blue suit, calm, upright, composed. At his side was Barrister Ajayi, Atlanta's most feared estate lawyer, undefeated in cases involving land and legacy. Across from them sat 3 different corporate attorneys, each representing a conglomerate that had quietly swallowed pieces of the Carter estate after the fire. The battle for his family's legacy had begun. Hudson's hands clenched beneath the table. "My father built an empire with sweat, not shortcuts," he thought. "And if I have to bleed to take it back, I will." The judge entered. Everyone rose. Court was in session. Meanwhile, in a nearby hotel lobby, Nia sat with her phone in hand, heart pounding. She had received 3 messages that morning. No number. No name. Just this: "Your mother didn't die peacefully. She tried to stop Veronica, but someone else stopped her first. Check the back of her wedding portrait. You'll understand." Nia stood abruptly. Back in the courtroom, Barrister Ajayi's voice rang through the air with precision. "My lord, we present newly recovered documents from the original Carter estate. Titles, purchase records, international, holdings. None of these transfers were authorized. None were signed over legally." Gasps echoed across the room. Ajayi handed the thick folder to the judge. The defense tried to object, but their arguments were hollow now. Then Hudson stood and approached the bench. "I was 7 when the fire happened," he began. "They thought I died, but I survived. And for 10 years I lived in silence, without memory, without family." Looked the judge in the eye. "My father didn't raise thieves. He didn't build for vultures, he built for legacy." Whispers spread across the gallery. The judge nodded solemnly. "I'll return with a ruling in 48 hours, he said. But as Hudson stepped down, he caught sight of one of the defense lawyers, smiling. Not nervous, not defeated, but smiling, like someone who had just set a trap. Back at the Thompson mansion, Nia entered the guest room that used to belong to her late mother. Dust coated the wedding portrait that still hung above the dresser. She pulled it from the wall and turned it over. Taped to the back was a folded sheet of yellowing paper. She peeled it off slowly and opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. "To whoever finds this, I fear for my life. My husband and Veronica are keeping secrets. Money has disappeared. Threats are whispered. Something is wrong. I love my daughter, Nia. If I disappear, tell her. She was born in truth. Not in shame. Gloria Thompson." Nia's knees buckled. Her father, and Veronica, they knew, they hid it all, and her mother had tried to fight back. Her phone buzzed again. Same anonymous number. "The man you love isn't the only one with a stolen past." She stared at the screen, trembling, then whispered, "What is happening?" The evening sky over Atlanta turned gray with an eerie hush, as though the city itself was holding its breath. Back at the Thompson mansion, Nia sat in her mother's old room, the letter clutched to her chest. Her thoughts spiraled. Veronica and her father had conspired. Her mother had been silenced. And now someone who knew far too much, was feeding her truths she wasn't prepared for. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video file. She hesitated, then tapped it. The screen lit up with grainy surveillance footage, time-stamped years ago. A woman stood on the balcony of a hospital ward, shouting at someone off camera. Her voice was unmistakable. Gloria Thompson. I won't be quiet anymore. You think this is about money? She's your daughter. If you let that woman poison her, then a slap. A man stepped into frame. Richard Thompson. Nia dropped the phone. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Everything she believed about her family was crumbling. Her father, her stepmother, her brother. They hadn't protected her. They had used her. At that same moment, in a luxury office at the edge of Peachtree Hills, Senator Langston Hale stood at the head of a table of shadowed men, old, polished, powerful. Hudson Carter has become a problem, he said coldly. The sympathy of the public is now his weapon. The estate ruling will likely be in his favor. What are our options? One man asked. We have people in the legal system, another muttered. Hale shook his head. Too late for backdoor deals. The court of public opinion is now louder than the bench. So what then? Hale poured a glass of brandy. We do what the old world taught us, he said with a smirk. We finish the story before it finishes us. Hudson, unaware of the storm building around him, sat in his hotel suite, staring at a map of the original Carter holdings. Properties, farmland, oil rights, forgotten bank accounts in Swiss branches, all stolen, all within reach again. But something else gnawed at him now, something beyond land. He looked up as Nia burst into the room. Her hair was windblown, her eyes bloodshot. She held the letter. Hudson, she said breathless, you need to read this. She handed it over and he read it in silence. His expression turned from confusion to horror. This, he whispered, this changes everything. Nia sat beside him. They killed her, she said flatly. My mother tried to stop them, and they took her out just like they tried to do with your parents. Hudson clenched his fists. You're not alone in this anymore, she continued. They didn't just destroy your family. They tried to erase mine too. He turned to her. I'm not letting them win. Later that night, in a private security office near downtown, a technician sat before a series of screens when a new alert flashed. Private network breach. Source, unknown IP. Location, internal files. Started disappearing. Names, photos, case numbers. Then one folder flickered back to life, labeled Operation Namdi. Subfolder, the fire plan. Subfolder, Phase 2, final sweep. A countdown timer appeared. 17:02. The technician's hand trembled as he reached for the emergency protocol line, but the screen cut to black. Across town, Veronica Blake, now freed on bail, sat in a darkened limousine. Her wrists still bore the marks of handcuffs, but her demeanor was calm, serene even. A young man sat across from her, Marcus Thompson. He poured her a glass of wine. I warned you, she said. You should have finished Hudson when you had the chance. He didn't answer. She sipped slowly. Don't worry, she purred. I have one more card to play. He raised an eyebrow. Which one? She smiled and pulled from her purse a black envelope marked with the seal of Langston Hale. Morning sunlight broke through the Atlanta skyline, but inside the courthouse the atmosphere was tense. Reporters packed the steps. Police stood at attention. Banners read, "The state vs. the silent takers, Carter legacy ruling today." Inside the courtroom, Hudson sat quietly. No crowd this time, no fanfare, just justice. At his side sat Nia, her hand in his. She wasn't just here as a witness to history, she was now part of it. The judge entered, The bailiff called order, all rose, and the verdict was read. The court finds that the Carter estate, assets, and holdings were illegally seized through fraudulent documentation, aided by political corruption, and orchestrated criminal conspiracy. Effective. Immediately, full ownership rights and legacy are restored to Hudson Elijah Carter, sole heir. Silence for a beat. Then the gallery exploded into cheers, gasps, and flashes of cameras. Hudson stood slowly. The judge raised a hand. "One more thing," he said, voice sharp. "All names associated with the illegal transfer, including Senator Langston Hale, Marcus Thompson, and Veronica Blake, are hereby subject to federal criminal investigation." Gasps again. That afternoon, as Hudson stepped outside into the sunlight, he was met not just by cameras, but by the city. People lined the streets, cheering, clapping, holding signs. "Welcome home, Hudson. Legacy restored. The sun returns." He didn't wave. He simply raised his mother's golden brooch, pinned to his chest, and let the moment speak for itself. Elsewhere in a penthouse suite, Langston Hale crushed a glass in his hand as he watched the live broadcast. Veronica sat on the sofa, calm. "Now what?" Marcus asked. She smiled and handed him a second envelope. "This isn't the end," she said. "This is just his first victory." Back at the Carter estate, restored and reopened, Mr. Grant sat in a wheelchair in the garden, watching the wind play through the flowers. Hudson walked toward him slowly. "I read all the letters," he said, softly. "My parents, they were more than powerful, they were good." Mr. Grant nodded. "And now, so are you." Nia joined them, kneeling beside Hudson. Caleb ran through the garden, laughing for the first time in years. The estate wasn't just reborn, it was redeemed. That night, as the stars blanketed the sky, Hudson stood on the balcony of the rebuilt mansion. He looked out over the city that once forgot him. Then he whispered, "They buried me in silence, but I rose in truth. They took my name, but I claimed it louder. They tried to end my legacy, but now I am legacy." And beside him, Nia slipped her fingers into his. Two souls broken by lies, now rebuilt by love and fire.